Deloitte recently published its 2019 Global Human Capital Trends Survey. And what it argues is that organizations need to reinvent themselves, but do that with a human focus. And that they need to do that in three main areas. They need to do it across the workforce, across the organization, and across HR. Then what we've done is broken down those three broad themes into 10 specific human capital trends.
Well, I think we're all curious to hear what the report finds every year. So to start us off, thinking about how digital transformation is already going on in a lot of the organizations that both Deloitte and Oracle collaborate on, are we saying these organizations now have to reinvent themselves again? I mean, it sounds a little bit like a daunting prospect.
Indeed, and we've both got clients, Oracle and Deloitte, who feel they've probably been through a digital transformation already. But a couple of statistics for you here. So firstly, 84% of respondents to our survey told us that they needed to rethink their workforce experience to improve productivity. And in the face of these new pressures to act faster and adapt to a more diverse workforce, 80% believe that they need to develop leaders differently. Now, whilst these might feel like very traditional challenges for organizations, they need to be seen in a new context, and that context is the social enterprise.
Okay, so social enterprise is a relatively new term.
Yep.
Let's try and understand a little bit better what that means in this context. Is social enterprise talking about societal impact on an employee's life, or is it something related to CSR or social media?
Well, CSR, corporate and social responsibility, is part of it, but it's broader than that. It's about how an organization can marry up the sort of traditional measures of revenue generation and profit making with their overall impact in society, with an emphasis on the environment in which they operate. What we've done is define 5 human principles that underpin the social enterprise. So let me tell you what those are. So there's a purpose and meaning, number 1. Number 2, ethics and fairness. Number 3, growth and passion. Number 4, collaboration and personal relationships. And number 5, transparency and openness. We introduced the concept of a social enterprise back in 2018. And for 3 reasons. And those 3 reasons are the rise of the individual, a lot of that powered by social media. Second is the gap between the expectations individuals have of governments and how business leaders need to fill that gap. And lastly, the pervasiveness of technology, both for good and for some of the more negative impacts.
How does this social enterprise match up with Deloitte's human capital trends for 2019 and also with the enterprise reinvention that we were just talking about?
Okay, so those 5 design principles that I talked about for the social enterprise give us the why for reinvention. I think reinvention goes back to the core. So, back to the foundation of an organization. How do organizations bring meaning back into work? And how do they connect that meaning at work to meaning in life? I think that means reinventing the enterprise with a human focus.
I think that's very exciting, and the human aspect is really critical. It's one of the reasons why our theme at Oracle this year is Work Made Human. So tell us a little bit more, for the HR leaders who are watching this segment, where do they need to focus if they're going to drive this enterprise reinvention with a human focus?
Firstly, they need to think about how does the future of HR create a place for employees to achieve self-fulfillment at work? What can the future of the organization do to improve individuals' pride and self-worth at work? And how does an organization create belonging as we move to the future of the workforce? It's probably worth us exploring this concept a bit further and trying to determine how reinvention means foundational change that uses technology at its core.
Okay, great. So then let's start with the future of HR. we're in a century-old function where all new capabilities, new sets of technologies. How do we focus on the human element in order to lead transformation both at the people level, but also across the enterprise?
Okay, so as far as the future of HR goes, we see 4 main trends. And I'll refer to my placemat here. So firstly, it's about accessing talent, and that being about more than just recruitment. Secondly, it's learning in the flow of life, by which we mean changing the way in which people learn and develop. Then it's about talent mobility. So that's winning the war on the home front, looking within the organization for your next talent leaders. And lastly, it's about HR cloud and how that's a foundation or a launch pad, not a destination in its own right.
Which, of course, that's near and dear to my heart, because at Oracle HCM Cloud, those are the things that we're trying to address in the capabilities that we provide in all 4 of those areas. So I'm curious to hear, Simon, how you see your findings through the Deloitte report matching up with our capabilities.
Well, finding qualified talent is amongst recruitment's biggest challenges. You've got high rates of employee-initiated turnover and low rates of unemployment on the one hand, but we've also got challenges unique to today. For example, accelerating the adoption of automation is creating intense demand for technical skills that aren't widely available in the workforce. And a lot of employers are saying that graduates leaving college are missing skills in complex thinking, collaboration, teamwork, and communications, so some of the softer skills. So we think a new approach to recruitment is needed. Rather than automatically just opening a job requisition when a job needs to be filled, it's time to think about how organizations can continuously access talent in different ways. Mobilizing internal resources. Secondly, finding people in the alternative workforce, so the crowd, associates, contractors, and so on. And then lastly, leveraging technology to augment sourcing and boost recruitment productivity.
And I think this approach is to continuously access talent is exactly the direction that we've taken as well. AI for employee retention and internal mobility is as critical as it is for recruiting. And I think that's going to be a key differentiator for a lot of companies, especially in very competitive sectors.
And there's an awful lot of very class-leading technology available to support organizations in accessing talent. So I was surprised at the statistic we saw in this year's trend survey. So we asked respondents to rate their recruitment functions. We found that only 6% believed that they have best-in-class process and technology, which is a bit of an indictment on the industry, really.
We definitely know that companies believe in and expect this kind of intuitive capability between the systems that they have. One of the things you mentioned, recruiting again, for instance, we have this feature called Best Fit Candidate, which helps organizations take a more strategic approach to recruiting. And the idea there is to identify talent with characteristics similar to existing employees. So you imagine a merging between a recruiting system and your performance and goals. Let's look at the profiles of all the folks who are doing the best in the organization, identify what are some of the common traits or backgrounds or experiences, and look for that automatically in the CVs of people who are applying. Mm-hmm. And that way a recruiter only gets a short stack. They only get a short list of those most qualified candidates. And by the way, because it's all based on data, if anyone questions their decision-making, the recruiter's own judgment is not the only thing that's called into question. They can point to the data that directed them to those candidates and have a justification for their hiring decision.
Yeah, and this takes us directly to the point of managing talent's mobility. So to fuel growth, organizations need to more effectively tap into their own current workforce and identify and deploy people with the required skills, capabilities, motivation, but also knowledge of the organization, its infrastructure and its culture. One quite shocking statistic was that 37% of our respondents said it would be easier for an employee to find a new job with another employer than their current organization. Instead, we believe that internal mobility can be a way to embed collaboration and agility into an organization's culture, which is one of the key attributes of becoming a true social enterprise.
Listen, I want to move now to the second actionable category in the 2019 Deloitte Human Capital Trends Report, which is the future of the organization. So how are teams, our networks, and new approaches, what are some of the new approaches to driving business performance?
Just to comment before we get on to that, Yazad, and that's to say, it must have been a huge emotional shift for Oracle to make the move away from the enormous investments they've made in on-premise software and redesign the cloud suite from scratch. So hats off to Oracle for...
Thanks for saying that. I think it's something to acknowledge when you have a 40-year-old company that's built its success in doing certain things a certain way, and then taking the risk to flip all of that on its head, which is what we've done by building cloud platforms from scratch.
So we already talked about putting the meaning back into work, and we see an opportunity for employers to refresh and expand the concept of employee experience to address the human experience at work, building on an understanding of worker aspirations to connect work back to the impact it has, not only on the organization, but society as a whole. And then we've got two additional trends to cover: team-based organizational models and workforce rewards. Our data shows that team structures improves organizational performance for those that have made the journey. Organizations that have not risk falling further behind. These organizations can look at several ways to drive progress, such as educating leaders on how to operate cross-functional teams and reconfiguring rewards and performance management to support team performance.
And then what about the role of workforce rewards?
So fewer than half our respondents felt that their reward strategy was well aligned with their overall organizational goals. A broader view of rewards is becoming more important than ever as organizations look for effective ways to motivate their people. And increasingly in the future, it looks like good business sense to view all human capital spending as an investment, not an expense. And I think that rewards are no exception. In a world of evolving worker expectations, high-performing organizations, I think, need to go beyond just meeting industry and regional benchmarks for pay and benefits. They need to focus on building relationships with workers to understand their values and needs, not just the hygiene factors, and on delivering rewards that address these in ways that support teaming and motivate performance.
And I think we're on the same page, Simon. In Oracle HCM Cloud, we specifically designed our workforce rewards module the same way. So the idea is it allows organizations to manage and deliver a unique benefits program that's aligned with their mission. They can influence sales behavior by aligning incentive comp to the overall business strategy, deliver tailored pay programs for global versus local populations, and do it all in one application, like we were saying. Well, look, I think we're getting towards the end of our time, and if you don't mind, one of the things I wanted to ask you to do is if you could just briefly summarize the future of the workforce category, because I think that's a topic that we want to explore more, maybe in a future session.
Yep.
But I think we'd all like to understand, how do organizations need to adapt to the forces that are restructuring job design, work design, the open talent economy, and leadership?
Well, I think you're right. I think the workforce of the future deserves its own session. I'd be quite happy to have a conversation with you on that topic. But I think what's important to note now is that jobs of today are more machine-powered and data-driven than in the past. But they also require more human skills in things like problem-solving, communication, interpretation, and design. And the bottom line is, as machines take over and tasks, and repeatable tasks, and the work people do becomes less routine and mundane, many jobs will evolve into what we've started to call hybrid jobs or super jobs. And the super jobs are the newest category of job that change the landscape of how organizations need to think about work. To achieve both financial and social goals in the 21st century, we believe that leaders need to leverage some new competencies. So that's leading through change, embracing ambiguity and uncertainty, and understanding digital, cognitive, and AI-powered technologies. And the final segment of the alternative workforce, contractors, freelance, and gig employers, that needs to be managed really strategically. And we can go into detail on that as well.
Well, thank you. And I think that's very interesting stuff because to me, the concept of super jobs is extremely intriguing. So I definitely look forward to our next discussion. Thank you so much for your time today, Simon. And if you would like to know more about Oracle's HCM Cloud solution, do take the quick tour that you can see now on the screen. This has been the Tomorrow Talks Business Edition. Thank you very much for watching.